Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here in the To Use Salazzle, a Pokemon confirmed to have a harem of other Pokemon. So let's get right into this with the Poison Fire typing. Actually, a really interesting defensive typing because we have a lot of super effective hits behind us that, well, Ground-type Pokemon absolutely obliterate us with a 4x weakness right there. But also Rock and Water, fairly common, with Psychics also bringing us some super effective hits right now. So you can see that as we're doing more and more of these guides, Poison-type Pokemon, fairly common, and Psychic-type Pokemon actually gaining some momentum with their super effective hits off of that. So, yeah, we kind of have to worry about almost all of our super effective hits, but then we pick up an insane amount of resistances. Fighting, Poison, Bug, Steel, Fire, Grass, Ice, and Fairy. It's really awkward because it almost makes for like a tanky Pokemon defensively, but we have too many weaknesses to really justify that. However, we get a quad resist on Fairy and Bug, and then we resist Ice, Fire, and Steel, and Poison, which are fairly common and fairly powerful. So it's all over the place in both good and bad ways. And then it works really well on the Salazzle because defensively, we are terrible. We are the ultimate embodiment of a glass cannon frail sweeper that is not meant to survive any kind of hits. That whenever I do these guides, I kind of consider a 75 hit points, 75 on defenses, the average sweeper range. Sweeper Pokemon aren't meant to be tanky, but if you really want to blow them up before they do serious amounts of damage to you, that is what we're looking at. Well, we're more frail than that. But we do have a lot of good things behind us, which means 117 on the speed, 111 on the attack. 117 speed is absolutely amazing. Like, once you're outspeeding those 115 ranges, you have to worry about so few Pokemon, and you just match up so well against a lot of things that we make that work out. And then 111 on the special attack. So it's not like we have an insane amount of speed and then garbage damage behind it. We have a solid amount of damage, really good amount of speed, and then our typing means we can actually like switch into Pokemon even though we are this frail. So we can deal with quite a bit with our resistances, and our super effective hits don't matter because even neutral hits get to blow us up. So very interesting typing that works well into Salazzle's favor because of the way that we have all of our stats and stuff. Offensively too, the typing really solid. So even though we get the grass overlap on super effective hits, Fairy super effective, Ice and Steel super effective hits, so a lot of common threats going away right there, and we also hit super against Bug if we need to. The only real issue are going to be Rock-type Pokemon, because Rock-type Pokemon will resist our Poison and our Fire, but then we can coverage out against everything else pretty well. So now let's go over, hop into Cerebi, the Corrosion Ability. So we're going to check out the moveset, but the Corrosion Ability is... I don't even know what to say, that this is one of the most broken abilities I've ever heard of. That Poison and Steel-type Pokemon, at least tanky Poison and Steel-type Pokemon, they've never considered the thought of possibly imagining what it could be like if they got Toxic Poisoned. That right now with the nerf to burn, like they got the dream right here. They can stall almost infinitely, they have tons of bulk, they have tons of tankiness, and now Salazzle can come in as a frail sweeping Pokemon and really disrupt all of that. That normally a sweeping Pokemon doesn't really threaten these guys if they're not getting hit like by overwhelming super effective hits, but now you can just poison a Steel or a Poison type Pokemon and then bounce out, and then the Toxic's going to take them down because they don't have the tools. They don't plan on these things to happen. So you can remove a lot of your opponent's stall by just bringing in the Salazzle. Now, interestingly enough, tanky Pokemon are meant to do a lot of damage, but Salazzle is very frail, so there is some threat right there, which means there's like this really interesting predator-prey kind of cycle, because yeah, okay, you trade the Toxic, but you could also end up losing your Salazzle for it against the right kind of Pokemon. Just a very interesting matchup right there, even though it's super powerful to poison a Pokemon that was never intended on getting poisoned. And then the moveset. We don't have much. We have the Venoshock if we want to play for like poison-ish kind of damage. Now, Venoshock is weird because it synergizes really well with Toxic Spikes. However, if a poison-type Pokemon comes in, Toxic Spikes goes away. So the Toxic Spikes isn't really reliable to try to get some extra damage out of the Salazzle, but a 111 special attack doing bonus damage on the Venoshock is going to be pretty devastating if you play to set that up. But other than that, we see standard stuff. We get Flamethrower. We get Nasty Plot. Actually, Nasty Plot's going to be really interesting for boosting. If we want to run the coverage, we have Dragon Pulse, and then we could go for the high damage, low accuracy on the Fire Blast. But then we get the business right here. Then we get what we need. So Sludge Bomb is going to be standard on most Poison-type Pokemon, but we get the Sludge Wave, so we get that slight little bit of extra damage, and that's really what matters. So even though a lot of Pokemon do get the Sludge Wave, it's not as many Pokemon as you'd think. That's not all the Poison-type Pokemon. So whenever a Poison-type Pokemon can pick up the Sludge Wave instead of the Sludge Bomb, that is always going to be a very good thing right there. And then we just have, like, physical coverage. Interestingly enough, Salazzle could work as a physical attacker if it actually had the stats behind it, and it's too frail to kind of make use of the Will-O-Wisp or anything else, but it does get the knockoff, has Snatch, has Fake Out, so there is a little bit of extra utility behind this Pokemon as well. And I did want to bring up the speed for a bit. So Salazzle is going to be the 42nd fastest Pokemon, and it's going to lose out to Hawlucha and all of these other guys right here. So like I said, you are going to be outspeeding a lot, but then it's mostly Mega Pokemon and Legendaries that are going to be threatening you, and against the rest of the cast of Pokemon, you know, you just go and outspeed and trash these guys. So I think the speed is in a really solid place. As you can see, it's very dense and more clustered around like the 115 to 110s and all the way down to the 100 range. But after that, it starts to get more spread out, and some of those Pokemon start doing pretty low amounts of damage as well because they trade it off. They trade high speed for low damage, and Salazzle is just kind of in this happy center to find a lot of effectiveness right there. Now let's go hop into Pokemon Showdown. This is not going to be a moveset. These are just some extra tech options that you can run. But then when we look at the Salazzle, this is pretty much it. This is pretty much it. We go Timid Nature because we need to get the most out of that speed as possible that the opponent just can't respond to us. You know, they bring in something like the Kartana. Well, unless it's Scarf Kartana, well, Salazzle just responds to it and goes and destroys it. That's what you use Salazzle for. You just bring it in as either a revenge Pokemon or a switch with one of your many resistances, and then you say, hey, respond to me. Because I'm either going to kill you with a super effective hit, or you switch, take free damage, and I can still outsweep you, and that's why we have Nasty Plot, Toxic, Flamethrower, Sludge Wave. So it's really interesting how Salazzle works. That we have this Pokemon that's super frail, does good amounts of damage, and yet it can still use setup and status. That you can't not run the Toxic. That if they bring a Toxapex on you, well, you Toxic Poison them, and now they're completely screwed. Same with any of these other moves. Like, you can set the Nasty Plot. Now, if they don't have the coverage against you to hit you, you set up a free Nasty Plot, they switch, you outspeed them, and then you kill them on a Flamethrower or Sludge Wave. And if they bring in a Poison-type Pokemon or Steel-type Pokemon, you hit them with the Toxic, and then their life kind of sucks right there. Also, you can play it a bit more safe on the Focus Sash, so you just bring in Salazzle, Nasty Plot, take the hit, you get nuked down, Focus Sash keeps you alive, now you Flamethrower Sludge Wave, and then you go and destroy everything that your opponent has ever loved in life. And that's how it's going to be. Other things you can run, Taunt. You can run the Setup Salazzle. Pretty much the idea behind Setup Salazzle is you taunt into the Nasty Plot, but then that puts you in a bad position because you're running Taunt instead of the Toxic. And it's really the sacrifice you want to make. Do you think it's more powerful to have Salazzle potentially toxic Pokemon and then switch out? Or would you rather just have a tank deal with that Pokemon? That if you have a bigger tank-busting Pokemon, I think that's a way of looking at it. That if you already have a Pokemon that's meant for breaking walls, if you already have a tanky Pokemon that's meant to outstall the tanks, then you don't need the Toxic on Salazzle. But if you have a very offensive team, then Salazzle might be what you need for that Toxic to at least slow down the momentum that their tanks are building against you. Substitute is always an option, and Fake Out could work really well in double battles, because you still have a lot of speed and a lot of surprising damage in those double battles as well. That is a pretty solid option. And the Life Orb. So, Life Orb Nasty Plot, everything dies. But it's still a bit risky because even if the move doesn't one-hit KO you, you're taking like 70% damage on a lot of different hits right there. So after the Life Orb burn, you might only score 2 or 3 KOs before you go down to your own Life Orb, even after taking a hit. Now, if you take a resisted hit, or that's why you taunt, you know, you taunt the opponent, they don't get to do anything that turn, they're forced to switch out, you get a free Nasty Plot. Well, yeah, now you just have the offensive options, full health, and the Life Orb, while still being super fast, doing lots of damage, and KOing everything because you're +2 with that 30% extra boost. So that's kind of the setup options that you can take with the Salazzle, and then the rest of this guide, it's going to be damage calculations, because this Pokemon is so crazy that you need to nuke whatever's in front of you. If you don't KO it, you are dead. That's pretty much how you have to play the Salazzle. That's why I want to go and check out these damage numbers and stuff. So ignoring the Hidden Power Ground on Sylveon, which does way too much damage, I'm just kind of showing how heavily we resist Fairy-type Pokemon, because Quad Resist, super powerful. We're going up against a modest Pixelate Choice Spec Sylveon, and it doesn't even 2-hit KO us. It's a 3-hit KO with the highest fairy damage out there, so we can just go and do very well against Fairy-type Pokemon. And that's kind of it. If you have that weakness to Fairy-type Pokemon on your team, just bring in the Salazzle, and then you go and dumpster everything and win. I think a really good Pokemon to think about is Mega Sableye. That Sableye's biggest weakness is going to be like the Fairy-type Pokemon and also Physical Fire, so you just coverage that out with the Salazzle, and yeah, your life is going to be pretty nice right there. So we can even come into a Sylveon, set up Nasty Plot, eat all those Hyper Voices, and then go and take it out with a Sludge Wave. So I have all the damage numbers right here, you know, Sludge Wave, how much extra damage it has on the Sludge Bomb, Fire Blast compared to the Flamethrower. So you can always run Fire Blast. It's going to give you more damage in a shorter amount of time. You can still find KOs even without the Nasty Plot setup, but it will have that accuracy issue, so that's going to be personal preference right there. And then, yeah, if we're at +2, that's boom, everything dies. That's kind of what we're looking for. So Focus Sash +2, I mean, even consider this. Like, Focus Sash +2 means that on super effective hits, we're KOing a full hit point invested 95 hit point 130 special defense Pokemon. That's an absurd amount of tankiness, while also finding those resist. So it shows the power of Salazzle when you use it in the right situations. Other ideas right here. So what I like to do is, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of bring those mid 70 into hit points and defenses. So this is gonna be the difference right here. That say you can't get a nasty plot set up, well, Fire Blast has a high chance of KOing the average Pokemon, for example. So as we can see right here, Life Orb, Fire Blast. That's going to be good amounts of damage. So this is where the big differences come in between low amounts of special attack and high amounts of base power. That 111 special attack is really good, but it's not going to go in one shot all of the opponent's Pokemon unless we have something like the Fire Blast under the Life Orb. But if we had anything less than that, then it shows our damage is more going to be in 2-hit KO realm, and we're too frail for any of that. So if we had a 120, 125 special attack, then the Pokemon gets even more devastating, and Salazzle would be way too unbalanced. We're just kind of showing the ranges of effectiveness we can find here on the Salazzle against average Pokemon. Other things like the Tapu Lele, how much does it take to KO a Tapu Lele? Well, at +2, Sludge Wave is going to find it. However, we really won't find it on the Fire Blast or the Flamethrower. So if we have a Pokemon that has 70 base hit points, max invested, 115 on special defense, so a very high-end special defense tank, even at the +2, without that Life Orb, we're not going to find the damage. And then when we add the Life Orb, then it kind of shows, well, that's one of those situations where we need the Fire Blast. So yeah, Tapu Lele is going to blow us up with the damage, and that just kind of shows why those super effective hits are so strong and how well we deal with Fairy-type Pokemon, just for an example right there. And then some other Pokemon matchups, Salamence. Now, this is just looking for higher end ranges that if we have Timid Nature, +2, no Life Orb. So say this is going to be a Focus Sash set with our Nasty Plot. So with a Nasty Plot, neutral hit, we can go above the average range and still KO quite a lot of Pokemon. If you have Stealth Rocks up, that's going to ruin the opponent's day, and that's kind of what we're looking at. Also going into Pokemon like the Tapu Koko, Sludge Bomb, straight up KO, +0, even with the Focus Sash against Pokemon like that. So it's pretty much just having like the awareness of what's going on. Tapu Koko is going to outspeed and just completely wreck you, which means you use your Focus Sash to survive. You trade your Salazzle for their Tapu Koko, and also, like, remember, you're surviving, you're KOing it, so you're going to have 1 hit point. You're going to have 1 hit point, and you're going to get an outspeed, so you're not necessarily going to have any time to like do another Nasty Plot or go for any kind of setup like that, but you at least have damage options. So in this case, the Focus Sash is going to be a really good 1+, so you can go 1 for 1 and more on the Salazzle in a lot of really big scenarios. So huge amounts of damage on the Salazzle in this case right here, and I think that's kind of it. I guess if you didn't want to like play any of these other things like the Nasty Plot and Toxic, you have access to the Dragon Pulse, and then you can also kind of throw out whatever you want for a hidden power. But I just feel that Salazzle works really good as an anti-fairy Pokemon. Anything that it resists, it just deals with immensely. You set up the Nasty Plot, you go for the sweep. If the opponent's team can't outspeed you, it pretty much loses, and that's what we're talking about here on Salazzle. Salazzle, really good Pokemon, really wild and crazy Pokemon as well. And it just works. So I think that's what we have to say right here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.